Good evening. Good evening. I'm Councillor Annabel Blackmore, the Chairman of Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this meeting of the committee this evening. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings this evening? I ask so that people at the meeting will know that this is happening. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if this is deemed necessary. So if we could move on to agenda item 1, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Jones, and I don't think anyone else is missing. Agenda item 2, substitute members. Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Jeffrey for Councillor Jones.
Thank you so much. Agenda item 3, urgent items. We do have an urgent update which relates to agenda item 12, the Sutton Valence Conservation Area and its proposed extension. Given that the amendment to this item is only half a page, we will not be adjourning the meeting to read the papers. I think the Cabinet member and Miss Britton will be able to explain the contents to us. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. Agenda item 4, notification of visiting members. I've certainly spotted a couple in the room. Could you pop to the microphone, please?
Councillor English here to speak to item 11 and item 12.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Russell, just observing. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. If we move to agenda item 5, disclosures by members and officers, are there any disclosures? Are there any disclosures? No? Okay, thank you. Agenda item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? Okay, thank you. If we move to agenda item 7, this relates to whether any items should be taken in private. Now, we don't have any yellow papers, so I'm proposing we keep this meeting in public session. Is that agreed, members? Thank you. If we could move to agenda item 8, please. This can be found on pages 1 to 3, and they're the minutes of the last meeting. Does anyone have any comments relating to the minutes, or can they be signed as an accurate record? Is that agreed, members? Thank you very much. If we could now move to item 9, which is the forward plan. This can be found on page 6 of our agenda pack. And you will see that the first 2 items, the Sutton Valence Conservation Area and the extension to Medway Street car park, are actually on this agenda. And then we've got the Statement of Common Ground for the Thames Crossing and the Town Centre Strategy Update, which should be coming to the next meeting in December. Does anyone have any comments on that item? Councillor Conyard.
Hi, just a quick comment about the Town Centre Strategy. I noticed that the consultees no longer have this committee on it. However, in previous revisions of the minutes, it has had this committee. You said it's going to the next meeting. Is that confirmed? Is that definitely the case?
Let's go to Councillor Cooper. I believe it is. I think there were reasons why it was delayed. Thank you for bringing that out. Councillor Cooper.
I didn't hear a word of that, Madam Chairman. All I heard was Town Centre Strategy. I'm really sorry. I'm quite.
Why has it been delayed? It should have been at this meeting, and it's been pushed back to December.
I'm sure if you speak to group leaders in the room, they'll, of which I think there are 3, they'll probably give the same account as I have. What has arrived so far and been presented to members of the Cabinet and then to group leaders is not going to be politically acceptable to the wider council. And until such a time that what is in there is what we're is accurately reflecting what we want to achieve.
Hang on, Councillor Cooper. Right, I'm going to stop you right. Oh my God. Sorry, the door's just closed. Okay, can everyone just remain seated for a moment, please? For those who won't be able to hear it on the webcast, the fire alarm has just gone off. So we'll just be stopping the meeting or pausing for a moment. Okay, welcome back everyone, and well done over the fire drill. We all found the roster point, which is the most important thing, and safely out and safely back in. So for all of you on the webcast, we had a quick fire drill, we're back, and the meeting will continue. I believe we were on agenda item 9, and the town centre strategy had been raised by Councillor Conyard because he wanted to know why the item had been pushed back to December. So, Councillor Cooper, would you please continue? I think you said that it wasn't politically.
Well, I
Happy.
don't, it's not necessarily political in the sense of being party political, but there is further work that needs to be done, and I don't think it's in any position at the moment. And I look for reassurance to group leaders in the room who have been properly briefed on this. There is a list of works which are still to be undertaken, and I have had correspondence with the chief executive, who's agreed that there is a number of pieces of work, including retail capacity studies, which I understand Karen Britton is going to lead on before we are anywhere near ready. And I think it's very important that we get this piece of work right. It is costing quite a lot of taxpayers' money. We have a duty when we commission work to get it right, to do things to the best of our ability that provide the best value for money for our residents and produce the best outcomes. So it's been delayed as a result of that. I'm not the lead. I'm not leading on this. David Burton is, but I know from speaking to David that David's very keen that we get cross-party consensus. It's not about a Conservative administration. It's about the council. It's about the town centre in particular. And I think until all groups are happy and there is larger consensus, it won't come back in a position that's finalised.
Councillor Conyard, do you have a further question to add? Are you sure? So we're taking it from that, Councillor Cooper, that we see the document in December. Is that correct?
I couldn't confirm at this stage. If it isn't ready and it isn't suitable, then I wouldn't want to take it back to this committee. And I think the sounding board will be the group leaders meetings and before that when it's presented to cabinet. So I hope that it is ready in December, but that is a short time frame from now. There's a lot of work still to be done. I'm not going to give an assurance which I might not be able to keep.
Okay, fair enough. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for that, Councillor Cooper. I have to say you were quite diplomatic. There were some significant omissions in what we saw, and I, for one, don't want something, and I'm talking personally here, I will need to have time to study any documentation. So it's quite a weighty tome, shall we say, and it will need to be scrutinised properly. So I'd like to thank Councillor Cooper for giving that feedback, but I think he is right. There is cross-party concern around some very significant omissions that were in the document that we saw, and from my group I would say it's no use fluing with the words. We need to see inclusion that gives us a document we can take forward for the future. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, so given those comments, I move that the forward plan be agreed. Okay, is that agreed, members? Sorry, did you want to speak on that? Okay, thank you. Lovely. If we could now move to agenda item 10, the financial update and performance monitoring report. Councillor Cooper is joined by two officers tonight, Mr. Lovegrove and Miss Britton. We'll start with you, Councillor Cooper, and I'm sure the committee will have some questions for you.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much. I think in terms of the second quarter finance update and performance monitoring report, it is largely good news. We're on the whole in line with our KPIs. There is a slight overspend of £108,000 and we expect the overspend for the year within this remit to be 92,000. this is largely a result of a decrease in planning fees coming in. There are fewer planning applications being submitted, particularly on the major side. Now, that is a concern in other areas. We do not want to fail on our 5-year housing land supply, or more crucially on the housing delivery test. However, we are quite literally at in the dog days of the current local plan, and obviously the next local plan review, which we hope to get adopted by full council early in the new year, should bring with it an upswing in planning applications and therefore revenue. So I think largely that's where it is. In terms of the economic development KPIs, I'm largely quite happy there. The one area which does cause me significant concern is the town centre footfall. I think that's quite significantly down on the benchmark. Now, we have very little control over that because the council does not own the town centre. And this is precisely why we're embarking on a town centre strategy, because we know that bringing people into the town centre to spend money promotes employment, promotes economic regeneration of the town centre. The more people who visit and the more money that they bring with them, the nicer we can make the town centre. So we do need a vibrant town centre, and that is why it's really important that we get town centre strategy right and we actually tackle the problems that we have in front of us, rather than problems which we don't really have. So I can't give any sort of reassurance that this KPI is going to improve in the short term, because I don't think we have the levers to do that, other than working on the town centre strategy to have a medium and long term ambition to improve that. So that is the one thing that sort of really does concern me within this report. I'm happy to take any questions from members.
Thank you, Councillor Cooper. I've got Councillor Mrs Grigg and then Councillor Jeffrey. I didn't think that either of the visiting members wanted to speak on this item. I think Councillor English said 11 and 12. And Councillor Russell said she was observing. Yeah, Councillor Mrs Grigg.
Thank you, Chair. It was just a comment really on the town centre for footfall, and I'm just a little bit concerned by the wording that's in this report, from the point of view that I see you've put in part due to the rise in inflation and the cost of living. And I think we've got to be very careful going forward that not everything is put down to the cost of living. I think it is equally the bigger stores leaving the town, and it is equally about security and resident safety. And I think if anything, those two things are higher than the actual cost of living influence on this. So I just, where, and I'm sure Councillor Cooper has it on his radar anyway, but we have to be very careful that with this town centre is a huge myth, a huge gap between the two, between what's happened and the target, that we are taking those things in consideration and talking to relevant people. Thank you.
Is there anything you want to add at that point? I apologise actually, members. I've forgotten that Miss Benville is also online with us, so apologies for that. Anything you wanted to add at that point, or shall we go to Councillor Jeffrey?
No, I agree. You know, there's nothing more to add. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. My thunder's been stolen around the footfall in town centre. The only thing I would add, I suppose, is that it, as a KPI, it's quite a blunt one and doesn't really say as much as I'd like it to say. I do think there are two other worrying KPIs immediately underneath around the increase in unemployment. I've got two questions, I think. One is on the major planning applications. You mentioned that the income was down, yet on page 22 it says we've got a target that's up. So I didn't quite understand why we've got arrows going up and a shortfall. Maybe it's the income target that's missed. It's the box at the bottom, the top one in the bottom list of KPIs. it looks like it's all rosy and positive, and yet the other thing says otherwise. A second brief question around planning enforcement caseload, 350 or so cases, 120 or so get closed and opened each quarter. I'm assuming they take about 9 months, therefore, to go through on average, but it would be useful to have a sense of how long the longest ones are, because that could be 350 that have been sitting there for 10 years. So some sense of the sort of quartiles would be really helpful.
Thank you very much. In terms of your first comment, that I appreciate it wasn't a question about town centre football being a blunt instrument. I raised that at the last meeting. I have spoken to Carly Benville about this, and I know that she is doing some work with members of the economic development team on what meaningful and measurable KPIs we can have. So hopefully that will feed through. But if we're going to have KPIs, they need to be meaningful. We need to be able to do something about them. In terms of, I'm looking at page 22. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Certainly, to the best of my knowledge, we are.
Because processing is good. Tell me
if
it's wrong. Therefore, why the income down?
Yeah, the processing is good because we have fewer to process, largely. The amount of major applications, which obviously attract fees, has dramatically decreased. And that is patently obvious as well. Unfortunately, we're starting to get fewer planning consents coming through the system, if that makes sense. Yeah, because of the turnaround. I'm not aware that we've got too many planning applications that have been hanging around for a number of years. There are a few which do crop up. Normally, once planning applications go on for any length of time, they tend to cross my inbox. There's one at the moment that I'm aware of, and it's a particularly complicated case, and we're waiting for ecological surveys. But I will ask that data can be extrapolated in a little bit more detail for future KPI reports, because I think it's relevant, and I think it's important that we get to know.
Did you have a supplementary, Councillor Jeffrey?
Sorry, my last question was actually around the enforcement rather than the applications, and the sort of breadth of length of time.
I think, you're absolutely. Apologies for misunderstanding that. To be honest, I could probably give the same answer in that we could get a little bit more information to extrapolate. Clearly, hitting an enforcement target is great, but if there are a number of quite serious cases around, it's what we're enforcing. So exactly the same thing. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper, is it okay if I add some supplementary information to that?
Please do, Carly.
So we do hold our planning enforcement dashboard on our website, open for the public, open for members to see. So I'm just taking a look at that now, and that does tell you when planning enforcement cases were received. So just crude numbers, you're looking at around half of those open cases were received within the last 9 months. The rest of them being historical. But if you'd like me to forward you links to those pages, then I'm happy to do that as well.
Thank you, Carly. I appreciate that.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Now, Councillor Trubinsky, then I've got Councillor Cleater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to briefly go back to Councillor Griggs' point, I totally agree with that about the town centre and the reasons for people, the footfall reducing, security, etc., etc. But one thing I would kind of observe is that when I speak to residents who are living and or working in town, and then I speak to residents who are in the rural areas, in the villages, there's a definite mismatch in their opinion of whether the town centre is a place to go or not. And I think maybe we should be looking as well as a town centre strategy at making sure the communication about what is actually the real state of things goes out to our residents properly, because there is a definite mismatch in what people think and believe. That's all. Thank you.
I think that's a very fair point, actually. Councillor Cleater.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick questions. One's clarification. I'd just like to agree with Councillor Grigg on if you want people to come into town, they've got to have something to come in for. So if you're my size, it ain't it. If you want to buy any clothes, that's for sure. I have to go elsewhere. The other thing is the premier shop that we've got, House of Fraser, obviously, unfortunately taken over by Mr. Ashley, which is beyond the control of the council, but it certainly doesn't have what it used to have in there back in the day, where you could go and get quality stuff. So I think part of the issue is the big ones leaving and the lack of replacement. So that, for me, that is a really big issue. If you want people to come into town, they've got to have and come for a reason. And if you don't sell or have available what they want, they will go elsewhere. Just on Part B, second quarter capital budget, there is in quarter 4 100,000 for the town centre strategy at page 21. So I'm presuming, am I right, that this is for the consultants? Or is it for something else that we haven't yet agreed is going to happen with the town centre strategy that hasn't come to committee?
Can anyone throw some light on that? I don't know whether that's Councillor Cooper or Councillor Cleater. Can you turn your microphone off, please? Thank you.
Sorry, I questioned whether the consultants' costs are being capitalised, and I'm told they are because it's going towards a longer strategy. So, yes, in answer to Councillor Cleater's question.
Any further questions, Councillor Cleater? Were you happy with that?
Or just a comment, I can cut and paste Altringham's work as well as anyone, but there you go.
I'm sure across the country there will always be things which are similar, whether it's here in the southwest, in the north. I think there'll always be similarities. Are there any further questions? No further questions? Okay, if I can ask you to turn, members, to page 9, I'm going to propose the recommendations from the chair. Will someone second those? Thank you, Councillor Grigg. Are they agreed, members, on page 9? Perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ms. Bendel, as well. I'm sorry we forgot to introduce you at the start of the meeting. So if we could move on to agenda item 11. This relates to the works at Medway Street car park and also the we'll just have a quick switching of chairs. I think we're welcoming Miss Evans with us. I will ask Councillor Cooper, when he's finished his little chat, to introduce the item. Thank you very much.
Madam Chairman, I was merely saying good evening to Katie. But members, in front of you is the extension of Medway Street car park, which isn't really an extension. It's 2 car parks as it is. It's basically to amalgamate the 2, so to plop a ramp in and to improve the facility here. So the lower car park, which currently has direct access from the high street, has belonged to the council for some while now, and the space has been let out on long leases to local businesses. That is no longer the case, and the car park sits empty. I went down there with other members of the cabinet to have a look at this car park several months ago, and lo and behold, we could not get parking spaces because the demand is high. And this is one of our highest demand car parks. It is therefore, it strikes me as being fairly sensible to use the land which already exists as an extension for our public car parking. It means that people can much more easily park in town. They can much more affordably park in town at the rates which council charge, which tend to be significantly lower than some adjoining some nearby car parks. It is much needed revenue for the council. This car park needs improvement in any case. It doesn't look very pleasant. It's pretty grim as it is, and it's been in that case for a while. It will come along. We are currently looking for places to put secure cycle storage in the town centre, and I think this site in particular lends itself perfectly to that. The other aspect that is mentioned in the report, and I think this does need a lot more work at the moment, is to fund an electric car sharing scheme. I'm a little concerned about that, because I think the larger problem is that people who live in the town centre struggle to park. So I would prefer that we looked at providing some mechanism for people who live in the town centre to be able to park. And I also want to make sure that such a scheme would be used when there is a car hire company quite literally next door. So I have a little bit of a concern about that. I would probably prefer that we look at how residents can park and how people might be able to charge their own electric vehicles. The important factor to all of this is, what will it cost? Well, essentially nothing. Nothing will come from the council's base budget. So there is some ring-fenced money which can only be used for certain projects, such as looking after our car parks, and that comes from the enforcement budget from on-street enforcement. So this does not come from the council's base budget. There's no borrowing required. There's money quite literally sitting in a pot there that we need to spend, and we envisage that adding the extra spaces will bring much needed revenue to the council and will provide people visiting the town centre extra car parking spaces. I am happy to take any questions and any comments that we've got, and thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cooper. Ms Exton, do you have anything you want to add at this point, or before we go to Councillor English, who'll be asking the first question?
Thank you, Chairman. No, nothing to add.
Perfect, thank you. Just thought I'd check. Councillor English, and then we'll go to Councillor McKenna.
Thank you to Ms Exton and the Cabinet Member for a well-considered report. I'm generally, as the member for High Street Ward, quite concerned many aspects about town centre car parking. I place on record my personal belief, and I think of most of my colleagues in my group, that town centre car parks are not the place to be building particular housing developments. They tend to end up very unsympathetic developments, as we saw with the proposal to develop on Keene Street and some of the schemes that have been proposed on Medway Street. So I'm keen to see these car parks preserved and extended. They are also key to this council's revenue budget. If we lose them for a capital receipt, we end up crippling ourselves economically as a council going forward. They are also key to the regeneration of the town centre, which we have just been talking about. Car parks aren't the only solution by themselves. As has been said, one needs things to visit in the town centre, whether that's retail or leisure. Where I would quibble with earlier remarks in the previous discussions is the assumption the council doesn't have any levers. We do in fact have quite a lot of levers, but they mostly revolve around a number of policy initiatives to actually make sure that things are happening in the town centre, whether those are, we do spend a lot of time on physical infrastructure in the town. We don't necessarily spend the time on the social and cultural infrastructure too, although that has been improving. Credit to Councillor Russell for doing some work in that area. So what I would say is this all is part of a jigsaw that fits together. In terms of so this work needs to be done in Medway Street, and you can see the improvement that happened when Keene Street was removed from a decrepit, rundown place that no one wanted to park their car in. And talk about security concerns. I think Ziggy is mostly right that it's largely perception, but the old Keene Street car park really was dangerous. No one in their right mind would want to park there. Since it's become a surface car park, albeit smaller, it is well used and you can hardly get in there at times. Same with the Medway Street car park. We have an opportunity. Yes, there is a risk it moves customers from one place to another, but probably in this location, that would not impact on the council negatively. It might impact on some of our competitors. What I would say is that I believe there is still, even if I'm wrong and the overall parking demand in a town centre does fall, there are other things we can do to get income in this car park and other car parks, and as Councillor Cooper has said, actually help the residents in the town centre who currently have very few places to park, on that, whether that's at night or during the day. I would say that I do think we need the electric charging points, but not necessarily at this location. It has occurred to me, and I think to Councillor Cooper, that we have an underperforming car park, a really underperforming car park behind Lucas House, the Mill Street car park. Perhaps what we should be doing is turning that whole car park into our electric charging car park. And that might incentivise people to be using that car park and free up space in Medway Street and elsewhere for residents to park their vehicles, which is frankly needed. And I'm talking about off-peak parking, obviously not during the peak of customer demand. But we need to think that scheme needs to go ahead, but is that necessarily the right scheme? And could we do a bigger scheme of electrical charging points in the Mill Street car park? Because currently it's underused and the council isn't getting the revenue from that site that potentially we could be getting. So finally, I close by saying we have opportunities here. I have fed these back during the discussions on the town centre strategy, but I have to say I'm mystified. I don't know whether they've been taken on board, because I am concerned and my group are concerned that we've made representations time and time again during this process and have had no feedback at all. And the two final stakeholder meetings have not taken place, and I would have thought, given that we are now putting this process off until December, that we would have had time for the town centre councillors to have had those two additional stakeholder meetings, during which many of the points I've just raised were brought forward.
Thank you, Councillor English. I think it's fair to say, if you look at a variety of car parks across the borough, where we've undertaken renovation works, it has actually improved the footfall there. I mean, if you think about the one on Palace Avenue next to the police station, and it used to have all sorts of issues, and then it was refurbished, they took out the mobile lavatories, they redid the fencing, they redid the planting, improved the lighting, and it does feel much safer when you're down there. I think Medway Street is long overdue. Frankly, it's looked shabby for probably 10 years, and it's so uneven. I think anyone with a walking stick walking through there does so at their own peril. I think your point about Mill Street, I know there was a time we had slightly different parking charges. I confess I haven't used Mill Street car park for probably about a year, but we always used to have lower charges there, just to see if that would bring in more people to park, but it doesn't. I think your point about the electric car park is well made. The only thing is there are barriers to people buying electric vehicles, not to mention initial cost and servicing. I don't know whether Councillor Cooper and Miss Exon have anything to add to Councillor English's comment.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I mean, in terms, there's already electrical charging points in Meadow Street car park. I don't propose that we would be ripping those out. What concerns me a little bit here is the electric car sharing scheme. I haven't seen any evidence that that would be successful, and I don't know that it would be of the greatest help to the residents nearby either. Councillor English's comments on Mill Street car park, that car park is used and it is profitable for the council. I've parked there a number of times recently because the Chartered Insurance Institute host their exams around the corner, and it's certainly not jam-packed, and it is a huge place, and I'm not sure that we're ready to embark on a huge piece of work just yet, but I think, you know, anything that we could do to improve the patronage there and perhaps free up spaces elsewhere would be useful, because it's quite literally 10 yards from the car park on Palace Avenue, which I never seem to be able to get a space in any time of the day. That's a bit of an aside, because I think looking at other car parks is outside the remit of this, but I take on board what Councillor English has said. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. No, I don't actually have anything specific to say, and to add to that, only obviously the Councillor English and Councillor Cooper can continue, and we can talk about this outside of the meeting with regard to Mill Street. Thank you.
I think your point about the stakeholder meetings, Councillor English, are noted, and I think that's been made on more than one occasion tonight. So I think we do. I don't really want to add that as a recommendation, because it should be happening. Councillor McKenna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Cooper sort of stole my thunder a little bit there. A couple of points from me. I do like Clyde's point around the sort of sole electric charging area, but I don't think that should be at the detriment to other car parks not having them. I think we need to give, you know, as many reasons as we can. My my questions are around paragraph 3.4. So I think the cycle storage is a great idea, but as Councillor Cooper was saying, the sort of green car sharing, is there definitely a need for it? And will we be sure that it's utilised before being implemented? Are we going to spend this money and not know if it's going to be used? I don't know who the best person to answer is, but it's a lot of money to spend if we can't get it granted for something we don't know that's going to work. Is there evidence of this in other areas working, or yeah, I just want to get a bit more detail around that, please.
I certainly haven't seen any evidence that there is a demand for it in that place, and I've certainly not seen any evidence that it would be a viable scheme that would continue going forwards. I am aware that there are other councils that have implemented such schemes, and they lose money and end up being ripped out at some stage. Having said that, there is no reason that in the future precisely this type of scheme might not take off in that place. And no decision that I make subsequent to this meeting should prejudice what we could do in the future in this car park, whether we turn the whole car park over to electric car sharing or electric charging. We could still do. I'm just very careful about spending large sums of money on things which aren't evidence. In terms of bicycle storage, there is a lot of evidence that we need secure bicycle storage in the town centre. A lot of people cycle in already. A lot of people who work in the town centre would like to cycle if they could put their bicycle somewhere. And there is a separate piece of work which is going to be presented to town centre members in the coming weeks about other areas to put secure bicycle storage. The only thing I would say on the bicycle storage is I'm a little bit nervous it'll end up becoming a weed roof rather than a green roof, but nonetheless, I think it is a really good scheme, and I really want to see that in the vicinity of Meadow Street car park.
Councillor Cooper, if I may say, there's no such thing as a weed, it's just a plant in the wrong place.
You're obviously not as fastidious a gardener as I am, Madam Chairman.
Do you not believe in rewilding? Councillor McKenna, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to come back, Councillor Cooper, on that. Firstly, the cycle storage, great location for it as well. So in theory, could that be parked upon doing more research and something that we could add in later once we know that, okay, it's a tangible scheme? Because there's no point implementing something that's going to lose money. But if we know, as you were saying, it could work in the future, there's nothing to say we could revisit it in the future.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can just add some information to that. There is absolutely nothing stopping us putting in retrospect an electric car sharing scheme. In fact, you could put that in anywhere because they require, if you're just doing it on a relatively small scale, you're only talking about 2, say, to 4 spaces. So it's not a great deal of area to put in on a very small scheme, or of course you can have a much wider scheme. So I could reassure members that you can come back to that in any of your car parks or areas of land at a later date.
Are you happy, Councillor McKenna?
I didn't realise I was saying the park it pun. As I said it, I thought, done well there.
It was very good. We thought it was a carefully crafted one, actually. Councillor Jeffrey.
Thank you. I do worry that we are got a scheme in front of us that is proposing additional car parking and encouraging more people to drive into town. I think in this day and age of increasing climate change and resource depletion, we should not be encouraging more traffic into town, or car traffic at any rate. So I think there's a fundamental problem there for me. I know it's only 13 spaces, and I do have sympathy with the people living in the town centre and not being able to park at night. I have great sympathy with that. But I would love to see this money put into something more constructive that gives us a reasonable return, but also reduces the demand for parking spaces. I'm also concerned that we've had this conversation about the town centre strategy. This is a town centre issue, yet it seems to be going around the outside of that town centre strategy. And frankly, I'd like to see this being considered as part of it, not separately. We've also heard a few months ago that the Cabinet's minded to revise the integrated transport strategy. Well, this surely is part of that as well. So again, it seems to be circumventing. I'm obviously not going to argue against bicycle storage or green roofs, and I agree entirely that there are no such things as weeds, just plants in the wrong place. Thank you, Chairman. But I do also think, there's an opportunity here around the car park itself. Why haven't we got a solar roof going on it? If we're going to charge vehicles, let's harness the sunlight to do that. Solar is very, very cheap and simple to install. And then finally, I suppose, there's some comments in here about where's this coming from, where's the additional use going to come from. There's clearly no evidence to say that this demand is particularly necessary here. I know there's anecdotal evidence only. So again, it would have been nice to see some actual evidence that this is needed. I don't believe it should be needed, even if it is. I suppose the final point, this is a reasonable space. I've had a look at it this evening on my way in. It's a large space, and maybe we could be a little bit more imaginative about the use of it. Just turning it into a car park feels a little bit unimaginative. Thank you.
I think it is worth bearing in mind. I think a lot of your comments are very valid, Councillor Jeffrey, and you paid tribute to the additional bicycle spaces. But I still think we do have to consider all sections of society. We do have to think about mothers who've got young children and buggies. It's very difficult to put them on bicycles. I think for the disabled, the elderly, again, it's difficult for them to be on bicycles. So we do need to be all inclusive. The one thing I would say is if we have got additional parking spaces, will there be a certain number for, those who are disabled or those who do have buggies? So I think those sorts of things we do need to bear in mind. But I don't know whether you have anything else to add, Councillor Cooper.
Just to pick up on a couple of points, I think one thing that Councillor Jeffrey and I are going to disagree on, I want to get as many people coming into the town centre in their cars, by bus, by any means of transport as possible. If I ever come into the town centre, I wouldn't dream of getting public transport personally. And I look around this room and I think a number of us are in that position. Now, that should not disadvantage people who don't want to use their cars, but there is a large segment of society who want to arrive on their own 4 wheels. I'm one of them. I think a number of us are. I think a lot of people want to arrive on 2 wheels. A lot of people want to come in by foot as well. tackling congestion in the town centre is, of course, a separate issue which I don't think we should lose sight of. In terms of demand, it's a car park that's very well utilised. So the evidence that we have in front of us generally suggests that well utilised car parks, if we expand them, we tend to see an increase in usage. It's difficult to say how much. And then the final point, which was about the solar panels, I see no reason why we couldn't put solar panels where there are roofs. The issue is what we want to avoid is enclosing car parks. People are much less inclined to park in enclosed areas because of the perception of safety. You tend to attract antisocial behaviour. So that's the only thing that would put me off of that. But if there were any opportunity, I certainly would be happy to explore that, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cooper. Right, I've got Councillor Jeffrey who wants to come back, Councillor Cleater and Councillor Trubinski.
Just come back briefly. I think people were putting words into my mouth there. I absolutely recognise that there are groups in society who need specific transport, have specific transport requirements, but there are many, many more who, frankly, could. For example, yourself, Councillor Cooper, could cycle into town quite happily or get a bus. So I think I just wanted to make sure I put that out there.
Councillor Cleater.
I probably should have declared an interest in this debate. My son and daughter-in-law live in Pudding Lane. My daughter-in-law can't park in town. She's lived in town for, I think, about 10, 12 years. She works in Tunbridge, so she tends to have to park her car up by the prison, where it was promptly stolen and written off. So we have a number of people where we have allowed buildings, some have been here for a long time, but we've allowed massive offices to be converted into homes. Those people, some will cycle, some will walk, some will get the bus if you're lucky enough to have one available, and certainly for a lot of areas they don't. And I'm not even talking villages here, I'm talking in Maidstone. So if you're on a couple of main routes, you're fine. If you're not, then anything after 6 o'clock at night, forget. But there are a number of people who are residents who live here. We have to get the balance right. I think what Councillor English is talking about is the sort of people like my daughter-in-law, who she works in Tunbridge. Coming home, she has to walk in the dark to get home. She has to park her car further away. If there was the ability to actually have some parking close by where she lives, as a lone female, because both my daughter-in-law and my son work in hospitality, they work late hours, then that's the sort of thing we need to take on board. Yes, we have to get the balance right, but we have to realise there are people who live in this area and they're increasing. And a lot of them, if they had the choice, wouldn't be living in the town centre. So I think we've got to get that balance right. But I totally agree. There's no such thing as a weed, as my garden will testify, because I'm absolutely useless at gardening. But where we can make green interventions, whether it's bus shelters with green roofs, whether it's parking with solar panels, then we should do so. But please don't forget the people who actually live in the town centre.
Okay, Councillor Trubinski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I think we do have to be practical on this. I mean, I wonder how many people who live over a mile away cycled or car shared to come here tonight. I suspect not many of us. And I certainly live in Ulcombe, and there's one bus once a week, and if I get it, I would have to be off it and back on it within 2 hours to get back home that day. And you wouldn't catch me dead on a bike, or you probably would, actually cycling on my roads, I'd be dead in no time at all. We have to provide, if we want to attract people in from the villages, we've got to give them somewhere to park. And it's as simple as that. You cannot expect someone to be cycling in from Headcorn or Ulcombe or Staplehurst or anywhere else. It's just not going to happen.
Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Dravinsky. Councillor Commands.
Thank you. I've been very quiet tonight. A question for Councillor Cooper, because I missed a little bit. Is there going to be any additional electric charging points in the car park?
Not at this stage, no, because the investment to put an electric charging point in the town centre is huge. They're not very well utilised in the town centre because the majority of people who use them in the town centre aren't people who live in the town centre charging their cars. They're people who come in. So they're in fact, the majority of people who park there aren't actually paying to charge their cars in any case. They have electric cars. I'm not opposed to electric charging, by the way, because you know, when we move forwards and we all have electric cars, we need to charge them somewhere. But let's be perfectly honest, if I were to drive into the town centre, I wouldn't be looking around for a petrol station to fill my car up with diesel. And electric cars now actually have pretty good batteries, so most people would charge their car at home, where they generally can get cheaper electricity and can charge it conveniently, would shoot into town and drive back. So there isn't the demand currently to increase the amount of charging points in the town centre. I would be wary of increasing the charging points at the moment because charging technology moves on very quickly, and it probably won't be long before we have very different charging infrastructure which will charge at different rates. So I think we're better off making those decisions when the demand increases and the technology has moved on. I'm certainly not opposed to it, however, there's just no demand at present.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, of course, Councillor Commands.
I totally agree with you about the technology moving on, because eventually they will be able to charge virtually in an instant. It'll be an hour from dead to full. So I agree with that. But what else you've got to remember is you've got over 400 private hire vehicles in the town. You've got 49 black cabs. They're all going to want places to charge when we turn around to them and say, well, you've got to have electric vehicles. So something to consider. If we're not going to be putting the infrastructure in, then we're going to have to put back the time when we actually say that you are going to have electric vehicles. And the other thing I just wanted to make a point about is the weeds. They are weeds. They do grow in roofs, normally in the loft.
Thank you, Councillor Commands. And with that, if there are no other questions, if we can turn to page 31, there are two recommendations which I'm proposing from the Chair. Is anyone seconding that, please? Thank you, Councillor Grigg. Are they agreed, members? No, oh, no, hang on, we have a dissenter. In that case, we'd better vote. So all those in favour? Thank you. And all those against? And are there any abstentions? Thank you, Councillor Conyard. That's duly noted. If we could move to agenda item 12, the Sutton Valence Conservation Area proposed extension. This can be found on page 38 of your agenda packs. We've just got a little bit of movement while Miss Exon leaves us. Miss Stevens joins us. Ms Stevens, I'm so sorry. Would you mind sitting in the seat at the end, because then you've got a microphone. Otherwise, when you speak, it won't be heard on the webcast. So I will move to... I'm sorry, we have a guest and I don't know your name. Apologies. Would you introduce yourself to us?
Sorry, Madam Chairman. Janice Scooch, one of the conservation officers.
Thank you so much. So if we move to Councillor Cooper, who's going to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. Now, I didn't say good evening to either of the officers when they sat down, because you told me off last time for doing that. So,
Councillor Cooper, just get on with it, please.
So there is an urgent update. on this, and it is really just a technical update. And thank you very much. I was trying to find the email, and basically it's around the legal implications of the decision, and it's about us having to. It's about some of the statutory requirements of informing Historic England, etc., of such things. So the amended recommendation reads, this report asks the committee to make the following recommendations to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development. That 1, the extension to the Sutton Valence Conservation Area as set out in the Sutton Valence Conservation Area proposed boundary alterations, December 2021, document of Appendix 1 be agreed, and 2, delegated powers be given to the Head of Development Management to undertake the necessary statutory requirements to implement the agreed boundary changes. Certainly nothing else in the report is changed from other than that sort of technical amendment, which I am fairly sure shouldn't cause too much controversy this evening. The report you've got in front of you, I can't see that it should be in any way contentious. It's an improvement on the current situation. That I have had no adverse comment from local member or certainly I haven't had any parish councils on my case about it. So I don't know that there's an awful lot more that I can say that people haven't picked up in the report packs. But I'm sure we can answer any questions that anyone may have. Madam Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. Interestingly enough, on page 44, there are comments that people have made. So, for example, there's the feedback, and overwhelmingly, most are actually in favour of it. But under the neutral, there is a comment about continue extending even further. So it just shows it is of interest. Councillor English, I'll come to you as a visiting member, and then we'll see if anyone on the committee have further questions.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the officers for another very useful report. Come as no surprise that I am in favour of the recommendation. When I was Cabinet Member some considerable time ago now, I pushed on with designating a number of conservation areas and bringing forward management plans and appraisals. And Councillor Spooner, I know as Chairman of the Planning Committee, and the former Vice Chairman of the Planning Committee, Steve Mumford, were very keen to see these brought forward as well in more recent times. Which brings me to the only observation I would want to make. It's all very well designating and extending conservation areas, but the key aspects are bringing forward the appraisals and the management plans. So at the moment we have a considerable larger number of conservation areas in the borough than have management plans and or appraisals. So I would just make a plea to the council as a whole, and we'll be raising this in other fora as we go forward, to put resources in to bring forward the other parts of this, the management plans and the appraisals, because simply designating and extending the areas by themselves, although it's a good thing, by itself doesn't achieve very much. And it's an investment because our planning office and conservation officers need appraisals and management plans if they're going to turn these designations into anything that we can actually use in the planning process. So please, can we go forward with some ambition coming into the next year?
Interestingly enough, both officers are nodding at each other as if to say, yep, we have to do that, we have to take it forward. So I think you've preached to the right people, Councillor English. Are there any comments or questions that anyone's got to make about the extension of the conservation area other than Councillor Cooper? Anyone else? No? Okay, Councillor Cooper.
This isn't a comment on the extension of the conservation area that we got in front of us, but if I can just respond to Councillor English's comments. I am pleased for once that I am a couple of steps ahead of my my colleague. To next month's pack, there will be an overarching, I hope to next month's pack, it was only discussed at Cabinet today, but to next month's pack we will bring a report on having an overarching conservation area. So for all areas where we haven't yet agreed a conservation area appraisal, we will have some overarching principles which can be used by planning committee, and the pace at which these appraisals are coming forwards now is much greater than it has been in my 2.5 years at the council. I'm getting emails all the time about new areas. So two-pronged attack. One is to make sure that anywhere which hasn't got one yet should have one. That was discussed with me a few weeks ago, came to informal cabinet today, and that will come to PAC next week, and then we'll go out to consultation, not next week, sorry, next month. And then, all being well, we will go out to consultation with that. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
If that's the case, Councillor Cooper, if it's going to be at the PAC next month, why did you not mention it when we discussed the forward plan? Why did you not bring it up at that point? Bearing in mind, Councillor Conyard picked up on the town centre strategy, which has been delayed. Why did you not mention that item that's coming forward in December?
Because, to be perfectly honest, Madam Chairman, because it passed my mind. It was, if you want some evidence that it was discussed today, I can show you my diary and the agenda for today's cabinet meeting. But I will ensure that it does get put onto our forward plan, if that's all right with you.
We appreciate your honesty. Okay, so are there any other questions or comments that anyone wants to make on this item? In that case, if I could ask you to turn to the urgent update, there are 2 recommendations on the update which expand on the recommendations which were on page 39 of our document. So I'm happy to propose this from the chair. Oh, sorry, Councillor. Oh, sorry, thank you, Councillor Jeffrey. I thought you wanted to ask a question. Thank you for seconding that. If I propose that, you're seconding it. Members, all those in favour? Marvellous. Thank you very much. Okay, so I think we've concluded all the items of business for this evening. I'd like to say thank you to all the officers who have joined us. Your comments and contributions are much appreciated, and I'll formally close the meeting. Thank you.